Welcome to the Ink and Pen Adventure Podcast with your host, Lori Ann. Are you ready for your next adventure?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ink and Pen Adventures. Today, I want to talk about my art journaling travel kit. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase that. I have a kit that I take with me when I want to potentially urban sketch or watercolor on the go. So stay tuned, and I'll get right into it. Have you ever wanted to capture that scene? Maybe you're on an idyllic little main street at a cafe and you look down the road and it just feels really inviting and really warm. The colors are lovely and welcoming and you want to capture it. So you take a photo. Absolutely. I do it all the time. And I sometimes take a photo so that I can sketch it or draw it or do something with it later. But also sometimes I take a photo because I'm afraid I'm going to forget. However, I've also started to bring along on trips like that, not every moment of every day, but on trips like that, a travel watercolor kit that I have put together over the last year or so. And I'm pretty pleased with it. I gotta say, it has had some incarnations over the years. It has been more complicated. It has been far more bulky, and I've gotten it down to a little folio from Art Toolkit that is, I think, probably like a B6 slim sized. So maybe 6 inches wide by 6 inches tall by 4 inches wide with a zipper. It's fantastic. It fits really nicely in my bag. All right, so I'm going to talk about the things in here, and then I'm also going to share those again on my blog, on the website post for this, as I did with my journaling supplies, because I think that seeing them visually, I'm not doing this on video, and so there really is no visual to go along with it. All right, my art toolkit. So I have the art toolkit in the small size, and it is the orange version of it. It's kind of a burnt orange with a bright orange binding around it, and I really do love it. It was worth the money. It was not terribly cheap, but it also wasn't as expensive as many of them from the Superior Labor or Galen Leather or anything like that. So I'm just going to go through the items I have in here and why on some of them. So the first thing that I do have in here that is, I think, one of my favorite things is it is just a cheap fountain pen by Platinum Preppy. That is probably can be anywhere from $3 to $10. $10 would be the most expensive ones, and that would be a specialty barrel. The reason this one matters is because it has a carbon ink in it, and carbon ink is waterproof after it dries, and it does dry fairly quickly. So if I'm really looking to do some urban sketching, which is something I do really enjoy, I just don't do it anywhere near as often as I'd like to, is that I tend to sketch in maybe light pencil, but I like to sketch in ink and then watercolor over that. And then I'll go back over the top of it again when I'm done with more ink. But this ink gives me, of course, it doesn't run. Sometimes I do want an ink that will run so that I can use it as a shading. That's not what this one is for. This is for base sketching. And then along with the base sketching, I do have a pencil. And in this case, it's a Curatoga by Uni. Uni makes the Curatogas. I do also have a couple of the Tombow monograph pencils and the Pentel. I'm pulling it out of my container over here. The Pentel graph gears. I do love the Pentel graph gears as well. So those would be my 3 favorite pencils for sketching or putting down a base drawing, along with my carbon black fountain pen. And the carbon black that I use is a platinum ink. It comes in cartridges. I believe you can also get it in a bottle. The thing with carbon ink is that you're like, why are you using a cheap little fountain pen for this? Well, carbon ink can gum up the works of a fountain pen because of the nature of the ink. And so I'll admit, I'm a little scared to put this in one of my good fountain pens. Also, this is a travel kit. If I lose this, it isn't a big deal. I have at least 3 more Platinum Preppy bodies I can put another carbon ink cartridge into. If I lose my TWSBI or my Pilot or anything like that, I would be very upset. And I also would be very upset if it got clogged up because of the carbon ink. So that's why I use this. And it's a good pen. I want to say it's probably a fine nib. It's an 03. So they go by the numbers instead of fine, medium, and broad. So that's that. And this happens to be a cherry blossom version, and I really like it. It's cute. So that's my pen, along with the pencils that I use. Right now I have the Kuratoga in my kit, but I do actually swap it out with the Monograph by Tombow and the Graph Gear by Pentel. I do like all of those. All right, the other kind of pencil that I have, and I think this is the last one, is I have an aquarelle, graphite aquarelle by Faber-Castell. Again, this is for creating shading and dimension because this one is water soluble. I love it for that reason because my watercolor palettes don't often carry a dark tone like a black. I will sometimes have a Payne's gray, but this gives me the opportunity to be really specific about where I want those shadows and then just add a little water, and it works really well. So the Faber-Castell Graphite Aquarelle, and this is in an 8B. I don't actually know if it comes in other sizes, so that might be worth finding out. All right. The next thing that I have in here is I do have a Tombow Fudenosuke, and I do not know how to pronounce that. Fudenosuke. And this is the hard tip. And I use this after I've completed my watercolor drawing to add in some outlines. I like outlined buildings. I think they look fun. And I also add some accents and some definition to things. It helps clean up my drawings, my paintings. So that's one of my favorite pens, the Fudenosuke. It is water-based. I believe it does run. Actually, can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't use it for something where it matters. The next thing I have in here is I do have a couple of felt tip pens. I have a Micron PN, not actually a felt tip. This is a plastic nib, what PN stands for. And it is the PN in black. And I use this for the same reason, but this is waterproof. So sometimes if I need to draw and maybe my fountain pen is not with me or something, I will use these Micron PNs, and I love this pen. It's one of my favorites. The other one I have is the Sensations by Zebra. It's a technical drawing pen, and it is in 0.2. And I think it's in 0.2 because that's the one I have. I'm not a huge fan of the really small ones because I write too hard. I put too much pressure down. So this is the technical drawing pen by Sensations. It is water resistant and fade proof, which is awesome. And then the other pen I have is, let me see if I can actually get a brand off of this one. Tombow. Oh, yes, of course. It is a Tombow calligraphy pen. It's got a pointed tip on one end. And I believe it's got a black tip on one end and a gray tip on the other. So it's good for highlighting and shadowing because the gray is fairly light. I'm going to test this. Yeah, it's a fairly light gray. I'll do a swatch when I put the picture up. On one end, and it's kind of a brush tip, and it's a darker black on the other end, and that's also a brush tip. So again, great for adding accents, definition, maybe details like bricks or something, which is really hard to do with watercolor. I often need a pen in order to do that. All right, those are the writing instruments, and that all except for the graph gear, because I only carry one pencil at a time. That all fits into this case. There's 3 slots on the left side, if the zipper opening is at the bottom, that are for pens, pencils, whatever. And then there's 3 slots on the right side. There's also 2 pockets in the back of each of those sides. So there's a lot of space in this. And I have fit all those pens. Some of them do sit in the middle, but most of them sit in these slots on the side. I do carry an eraser, and this happens to be the Mono Zero. The other one that I love is the Mono 1. So the Zero is a really skinny one, and it is great for cleaning up some detail. So if I do decide to use a pencil and then I paint over it, and then I draw over it, and I can't actually get all the lines covered, I will sometimes go in and attempt to erase. And I say attempt, can't always erase through paint, depending on the paint. So this is a great one. It is just the elastomer eraser, Tombow Mono Zero, and it's skinny. It's probably 1/8 of an inch thick. Works really well. It also slides nicely into this because it's the same size as a pen. And then the other item that I have, and I realized I don't have my water brush in here because I've been using regular paintbrushes and not water brushes. So I have 2 paintbrushes currently in here. One of them is an Escoda Prado number 6 round tip travel brush. So it's got a lid, which means that the brush heads don't get all mangled up in a bag. And I didn't even think about that when I was just tossing my paintbrushes into something, that the bristles can get bent and broken if you do that. So having a cover or a special paintbrush roll is probably a good idea. In this case, I like having this cover. It's a silver cover. It's not huge, but it's nicely balanced, and the brush works well. I just bring along a little cup that I can put water in. The other one I have, and this is just an odd little thing that I have, it's a Jane Davenport, and I can't get it to open right now. A Jane Davenport portable paintbrush that slides in and out of itself. It's only about probably 4 inches long. It's a rounded tip, but not a round brush. It's kind of a filbert. Yeah, it's filbert. Small, but it works really well for some detail. And again, the bristles won't get mangled up. I do often have a water brush with me. I don't often keep it in here these days, but I try to get the medium size, and I think Pentel makes them, Hoy makes them, and somebody else makes them. They're really great, especially if you are traveling in a way where you wouldn't be able to have a cup of water or even a little spray bottle to wet your paint down or rinse your brush off. And so I will use a water brush in that aspect. And I don't have one with me right now. And I'm trying to think. I also will sometimes keep a little spray bottle, but I don't tend to wet my paints down first. I tend to just use a wet brush. So the spray bottle has been taken out of here, but it does fit in one of these little compartments on the right side. So those are the tools that I use for my painting. I do have in here a small, I don't know if I can get it out of here, a small scissors. Sometimes you need them. That fold up. They look like Fiskars, but I don't actually think they are. They might be. They fold up. They have a very short, maybe 1.5 inch blade. So they're safe for TSA if you're traveling on a plane, or actually really any security where they want you to not bring sharp objects. It does have a sharp tip when the blades are open, but when they're closed, it's not really as sharp. Please know that because it's acceptable through TSA or other airport security, if you are international, it may not always be. Things like that do change. And please make sure you're checking before you go. Don't just take my word for it, because this is as of today in 2025 that you can bring scissors. Who knows? That may change. All right. That's the first thing. So the next thing I have here is I actually have 2 watercolor palettes. These are a combination. So they're both made by Art Toolkit, who makes this case as well. One of them is a collaboration with the Travelers Company, and I don't think these are available anymore. But one of them is a collaboration with the Travelers Company that is the size of a business card case. And I have, let me count, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 colors in here, ranging from red all the way up to Payne's Gray, with a variation of every color I think I could need in there, and a tiny little mixing palette. The cool thing about these is that the top of these, the lid, is also a mixing palette. And since I'm traveling, I'm not bringing a mixing palette with me. I will sometimes bring just a laminated piece of paper that fits in here because it's a little bit bigger palette. so that I can actually, mix some paints or clean off my brush or whatever. But it all has to be fairly transportable because I'm trying to keep this to just this case here. The other one was a gift from a friend of mine from Art Toolkit as well, and not the collaboration with Travelers, but it is I'd say it's a half size of the business card, and I have 7 colors in here and a mixing palette as well, and it's tiny and cute, and the lid is a mixing palette, and I really appreciate her giving this to me. I have put basic colors in here, so a red, a green, a blue, a yellow, an orange, a sort of sepia brown, and a darker brown. Maybe that's a Payne's gray. I actually can't tell from here. I don't have a little card that tells me what. In the bigger one, I have a card that tells me which paints are which. So those are my palettes. Right now, that's what I use. I do have a number of other palettes, but I don't use those currently. I have the Art Toolkit thing there. Okay, then over here in the back of one side, I have some Strathmore watercolor postcards. I don't really use them as postcards. I use them as little paint surfaces because they're, I want to say, 3x5, 3x6. Maybe they're a little bit bigger than that. They're not quite 4x6, but they're a little bit bigger than that. So I have that on one side. And then on the other side, I have more. I have a little watercolor book from Traveler's Company for the passport size Traveler's notebook. And then I have a scratch sheet of paper of watercolor cardstock that I use to keep my, to test things out on. And I do have a ruler stashed in here, a 6-inch ruler. So I can actually tell you how big those cards are. I have a 6-inch ruler in here. Those are actually almost 4x6. Yeah, they're 4x6 cards that I have in there. And then I have a ruler because sometimes I do need one. And I just tuck it in the back here along with that. So the Traveler's notebook that I use for my watercolor journaling is currently a Blackwing special edition that was a collaboration with the Blackwing Pencil Company. And I have a California Traveler's notebook inside it that I'm using for my travels around California. And I'm getting ready to do, a couple weeks, I guess it was last weekend. I went to San Francisco, so that's going to go in here. And then we're heading to Disney in a couple of weeks, and that'll go in here. And trip to, and this is the California trip. So anything outside of California, we'll use a different book. And then I do have the Traveler's notebook from the Blackwing collaboration, but I also have a watercolor book. That's really what my point is. I do have a watercolor book and the full-size Traveler's regular sized that I have been practicing my urban sketching in and some things like that. So that's been pretty fun. Within this, I do also have a little spot where I can put washi tape samples if I want to use that, and or adhesive bits. Travelers has the double-sided adhesive stickers that you can use, and they can actually cut them, make them small, and fit them in here. So that if I want to attach something within my memorabilia, I have the opportunity to do that. So that's the main part of the kit that I carry. And there are 2 other things that I will, on occasion, if I have the space, carry with me. And one of that is, so the 4x6 watercolor paper, actually, this is a mixed media paper, but not the postcard ones. So I will carry that separately. It's a Bienfang mixed media, and there are 20 cards in it, and it's great for all kinds of mediums. And the other thing that I will sometimes bring with me are my distress watercolor pencils, and it's set 3, and there are 12 of them in here, and they're sort of they're kind of a nature palette, I guess. Tattered Rose, Candied Apple, Crackling Campfire, Wild Honey, Crushed Olive, Rustic Wilderness, Peacock Feathers, Tumbled Glass, Faded Jeans, Shaded Lilac, Frayed Burlap, and Hickory Smoke. And I've used them a couple of times so far. I don't use them as often as I would like to, but it's a fairly small case. And with the 3 of those put together, I can easily fit that in with my journaling notebook and my book that I'm reading into my backpack without it weighing a whole lot and taking up a lot of space. So there it is. That's what I use for my watercolor outside, out and about in nature. And again, I don't do it anywhere near as much as I'd like to, but maybe I will post up a couple of photos of my paintings, my little drawings and paintings when I post this up onto the website. So, do you paint? Are you a watercolorist? Would you like to share with me what you use? Because I'm always looking for the perfect setup. I think we always are, or many of us are looking for the perfect setup, right? That one that really is just sings with productivity and it makes you feel creative and it isn't too much stuff. And you don't sit and go, oh man, I really wish I hadn't brought so much stuff because I'm not going to use it. I have that happen all the time. But I'm also the person that's like, you know what? I'd rather have it and not use it than need it and not have it. And so I try to streamline on a regular basis, keeping things simple. Like I probably don't need as many felt tip pens as I have in this kit, but I'm probably not also going to get rid of them at this point. But I will test them out maybe on my next trip and see which ones I do actually use and then maybe pare it down. I think the one thing I did forget to mention is I do keep a white jelly roll pen, a white gel pen in my kit because adding white highlights to watercolor means you have to not paint the area. And I never remember to do that. Never, ever remember to do that. So I tend to go in afterwards and add white with my pen. Sometimes I will also carry a small tube of gouache, white gouache, because it is a little bit more opaque than watercolor. And I can do some flicking so I get some white dots, make some stars or some accents. And I really love that aspect of it. So my apologies, I did forget those in talking about my kit. All right. And where's your favorite place to go watercolor? I am a big fan of cafes. I think cafes are fun to paint because it may look like just a Starbucks, wherever you may be. But if you take the sort of Starbucks out of it and treat it like a sidewalk cafe, it can be really quite entertaining to paint. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you share with me what your favorite watercoloring or painting or drawing tools are out and about. And with that, I wish you a bon voyage, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Have a great one.